Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today, shorter video for you. I wanted to talk through this graphic I put out recently on the X account, looking at the breakdown of minutes distribution across Manchester City teams under Pep Guardiola every single season, how many players hit every single milestone in terms of minutes or competitions, and then we'll get onto the squad and dive into how many players that we think when we look at that squad are going to be playing significant amount of minutes when it comes to next season. Now, if you look at this graphic on the screen as it stands from the 16-17 season, first one under Guardiola, all the way to the 24-25 last season, this is how many players in the squad reached 1,000 minutes, 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, and then 3,500 in those in each of those seasons. Now, if we went to last season, you'll see that only 3 players played over 3,500 minutes, 7 players played over 3,000 minutes, and so on. And as you can see with the 21 players that are playing over 1,000 minutes, it gives you a little bit idea of the number of options that he was looking at. Players obviously coming in January and picked up a good amount of minutes. Nico O'Reilly picked up, I believe, just over 1,000 minutes by the end of the season with the run that he did have in the team at left back. So you've got a lot of players there that weren't playing week in, week out consistently as the kind of main choice for a lot of positions compared to what we would have been used to in previous seasons, particularly 23-24 and the treble season where Pep had his kind of trusted general. So when you're talking about players that play over 3,500 minutes, you look at those 2 seasons here, you've got 7 and 8 over there versus having 3 in the last season, which I believe would have been Vardiol, Bernardo Silva, and probably Edison off the top of my head. But yeah, you just didn't have those really ready-made, trusted options that knew the system inside out, that he was confident could play every single type of game compared to previous seasons, and we saw that impact. Obviously, bigger squad as I'd mentioned, but when you look at all of these, it's incredibly consistent across it. So even when you're talking about next season that Guardiola's going to have a much bigger squad, as we'll get onto in a minute, and the departures that we haven't seen from the squad, we're not going to see players suddenly like get loads of minutes all the way across the squad. There's still going to be guys that play week in, week out that are trusted. We'll probably see these numbers return to something more towards that 17-18 season where you've got a bigger squad number, but you're still going to have 7, 6, 5 players that are really trusted to go deep in terms of the minutes. And we'll touch on that a little bit later, compared to, as we saw in 21-22, 22-23 and 23-24, that squad size just kind of got a little bit smaller as Guardiola wanted that smaller squad, and they let players go, but then felt they were fine to be able to handle the minutes across the season. And now with the Champions League league phase coming in, that's bumped the minutes right up, increased the number of games to a level, even if you didn't have all these cup runs, a lot higher. So then now you're going into every season knowing that City will more than likely have played 60 games across the whole season. Even last season with the league phase and the FA Cup run, I believe we were 57 in total. So you'd expect around 60 to 65 next season. They should do better in some of these other competitions, get through to the knockout stage of the Champions League, and so on. So yeah, just something to bear in mind when we do get to the squad as we do here. So then when I bring you this example here of a squad, I've just got your 3 keepers there. I'm assuming Edison's the one to stay, Ortega is the one that will depart. John Stone's expected to stay. I've left the 3 non-homegrown players out for the time being, which I'll touch on a bit later. But you've got Ake Gvardiol as your left centre-backs, your left-backs are Nathan O'Reilly. Nunes and Rico Lewis are put down as your right-backs. Rodri Nico as your number 6s. 2 different options as number 8 in Tijani Reinders and Bernardo Silva. Jeremy Dock on the left wing. Marmoush can always fill in there as well. I expect him to get a good amount of minutes in that position. Foden and Shirky as your 2 number 10s. Oscar Bob and Savinho out on the right wing. Now, obviously, a lot of those players can move in possession across the front line and play in different roles. But that's going to bring you to that total of 15 non-homegrown players. 7 homegrown players. Rico should become homegrown by the time he turns 21 at the early part of the season, so I've just put him down homegrown for the time being. And then including all these other players in there, that gives you a squad size of 23, including Nico O'Reilly, who on the Champions League rules will go down as an under 21 on the list B, and then next season becomes a homegrown player. And I've used the Champions League rules because they are more strict than the Premier League, so there is a less space available for non-homegrown players, given that certain players in his lineup will be able to count as under 21 on the Premier League, but by the time we get to next season, they won't be. So it's better to use this, as well as knowing that the club aren't really going to be looking to try to go into next season with players that they have to say, hey, you're involved, you're going to play, but you're not going to be registered for a Champions League game at all. I don't think they want that, especially with the way we saw that play out last season, even if it was for just that kind of preliminary knockout game that they played against Real Madrid. You don't want to have to leave players out of the Champions League. So yeah, this would be the squad. You'd have 2 more spots left for non-homegrown players. Now, Sfere, Nippon, Echeverri, Vitores expect to go out on loan. So I'll put that down there. And then that leaves you 2 spots for Gundogan or Kanji, Kovacic to come in. So one of those guys has to go. I think they're the only really kind of properly realistic players that are non-homegrown you'd expect to go. Wouldn't make sense to move any others on, really. So those are your 3 guys you're looking to try and offload. Neither of them, none of them are like easy players to offload with their minutes that they'd expect to get elsewhere. The wages that they have, the age they are, the quality they are, they're just not easy players to move on, mainly due to those wages. But they're players that are looking at the season knowing that in the different positions they could play, they're not top of the list. Minutes are going to be very sparse, and it's going to be interesting to see the way that plays out as we get to the transfer deadline day. Obviously, we'll get the announcement for the travelling list for the squad tomorrow as they go to Italy for their pre-season game. So I imagine there'll be a few clues in that of players that are left because they're going to arrange moves. But then even within that, there's players that will go just because they haven't got anything set up yet that can still depart before the Wolves game and before the deadline day comes around for this transfer window. Now, McAtee, Grealish, Phillips, I expect to find some sort of way out. McAtee reportedly going to be going to Forest. So yeah, it would leave you down to these 3 non-homegrown players where you're expecting one of these guys to go before the summer window ends. And if I was just to go on to what I said earlier about if we're saying 21 players are going to play over 1,000 minutes, then you can remove Bettinelli because he's going to barely play any minutes, if any minutes at all. He's probably not going to be in the squad for many games at all. You can remove John Stones as somebody that you're not expecting to play over 1,000 minutes with his injury history and then being in a depth role. And then that leaves you your 21 players all the way here of players that will play over 1,000 minutes. So if you're looking at somebody like Gundogan, someone like Kovacic or Akanji that's deciding to stay, you're coming into this setup as a player that on paper is not expected to play over 1,000 minutes. If you're one of the players, the younger players, Vitor Hayes, Echeverri, Sfere, Nippon, if you're staying, you're outside that 21 of the players that are expected to get over 1,000 minutes, and just 1,000 minutes is not exactly a lot of minutes for these players to get. So it makes sense why those 3 guys would be definitely going out on loan, because when they go out on loan, they're going to be getting 2,500, 3,000-ish sort of minutes, depending on where they go and how well they do on that loan spell. But they're going to get a healthy amount of minutes if they go there versus staying here and getting somewhere between 500 to 1,000 minutes. Would not be the best use of their time, especially with the depth within that squad. And then if you're one of the older players, you're looking and it's quite obvious you're not high up the lineup. You're not an obvious starter. And the players that are coming in are top quality. Rodri's going to be expecting to, once fit, play 3,000, 3,500 minutes. Then you've got Nico Gonzalez, your second choice as a number 6, most suited to playing in that role. Somebody that is getting around 2,000 minutes for that position. Well, then whoever else is expected to play as a number 6. I don't know where your minutes are coming from. If you're Dejani Reinders, you're obviously the starter as the number 8. So that's 3,000 to 3,500 minutes for you. You've got Bernardo Silva looking to get 2,000 to 3,000 minutes. If you're Gundogan and Kovacic deciding to stay because you think you could play as a number 8, where are your minutes coming from? Because you've got players like Nico, like Foden, and others that can, and Rico Lewis, that can fill in as a number 8 should things happen. But if you're choosing to stay on the proviso that a player's going to get injured and then I'm going to play, well, you've not got a clear route into the team for minutes there, have you? So it's very tough to understand why these players will stay, other than the difficulty of moving on their wages. But as you can see here, and I've explained in this video, we're very tight for non-homegrown spots, so somebody has to go. One of those has to go. And then even when you're looking at the minutes in previous seasons under Guardiola, particularly last season and the early years, and then the players that you have here, where's the route for minutes for these players when they do choose to stay? You're looking at less than 1,000 minutes just from looking at the numbers over the previous years. You know, Josko Vardio's going to play a lot of minutes. Ake's going to play a lot of minutes. So that's your left centre back covered. So that's not a spot that that Akanji can come in and take. Ruben Diaz Kusanov, that's your right centre back taken. You're not going to come in and get loads of minutes there, and then you still have John Stones to compete with. You've got Matthias Nunes as the obvious kind of standout option as the right back choice heading into the season. You've got Rico Lewis as a genuine option for a select amount of games that he's shown over the last few years within the team. You've got John Stones that can do a job out there as well. So even if you're Akanji looking to stay and get yourself minutes at right back, you're not looking at a spot where there's an obvious route to 3,000 minutes there and to be a regular unless somebody gets injured or you're betting on them having a terrible performance. And then even within that, you look at the way the team's played. You don't bring those qualities for the fullback either. So it's just very tough to see where these guys get their minutes. And because we know that a player has to depart, it's very hard to take seriously the reports that you're seeing. If you're City, you're not going to be telling people that you want to offload these players and to get unfavourable deals either. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see the way it plays out. I do really like the squad. I do like the idea of those players going out on loan. We're obviously going to next season open up more spots in the team. Stones, Bernardo Silva depart on frees. Edison departs on frees. So wage bill opens up. Spots into the team open up there. You've got talented players out on loan coming back. You've got players like, if they stay, Akanji and Ake, that are easier to move on with their contract situation. Kovacic as well. If he stays, contract situation is easier to manage that next season. If Gundogan stayed, he'd run out on a free next season. So you know, by the time we get to summer 2026, we're going to be still in a good position to spend more, to bring more players in and fine-tune that situation and continue to reduce the wage bill in a healthy way, and then open up space to spend on the players that do need those contract extensions, as we expect Diaz, Rodri, Foden to get their ones done. But then after that, you're starting to look at other players in the team, like Josko Vardiol, that needs that contract extension for a longer amount of time. So all those things will start to come around. I know Rico Lewis is reported as well. So in a good position moving forward, but in the meantime, in the short term, you still need to offload players, and then you're still going to have those teething problems of players of a big squad that just aren't going to get minutes, and being able to manage that, given Guardiola's criticism about not wanting a small squad, wanting players that believe they have a genuine chance to get minutes and be involved in the team and contribute, which creates a great atmosphere. Well, as I've just laid out for you in this video, there are players that quite obviously, if they stay, are going to play less than 1,000 minutes. That's not a player that believes they have a genuine opportunity to be a starter week in, week out. And that feeds into what he said he doesn't want to create, which is an atmosphere of players unhappy and don't feel like they are contributing. You don't want many of those players. So you don't want loads of, as great as he probably was around the dressing room, you don't want loads of players like Sergio Gomez that know they're not going to be a starter week in, week out, and they don't have a genuine chance to be a starter week in, week out. You don't want to have those situations. So yeah, just my kind of general thoughts on that graphic I put out, talking through the squad. If you have any questions, let me know down below and I'll jump in and reply to you. If there's something you want me to do a future video on, please let me know, and I'll get to work on that video this week. Otherwise, yeah, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the video to help support the channel, and we'll be back with more content this week.